We've all heard it, haven't we? Kids these days, they're digital natives.
Right, practically born with a smartphone in hand.
Exactly.
Hmm.
They must be amazing with technology. At least that's what we tell ourselves. But what if that's not the whole story?
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into this huge study, the ICILS 2018. It looked at over 46,000 eighth graders.
Wow, that's massive.
Yeah, and get this. It wasn't your typical can they use a computer test. They looked at 14 different countries and regions, and they were trying to figure out, can these kids actually think about all the stuff they see online?
It's one thing to use technology. It's a whole other thing to use it well.
Right. Like, knowing how to Google something is not the same as knowing how to evaluate the information you find.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about here, digital literacy. Can they sort through all that information overload? Can they pick out the credible sources from the noise? That kind of thing.
And that's where this study gets really interesting, because it turns out those top-level skills, the kids who can not just use information, but really think critically about it.
Don't tell me it's a small number.
Tiny. We're talking 2%.
2%, so much for digital natives.
Right.
Yeah.
It really makes you think twice about that assumption. And here's the thing. The study found that most of these kids, they actually have pretty decent access to computers, software, the whole shebang.
So it's not just about having the tools.
Exactly. It's like thinking that everyone who owns a cookbook is automatically a chef. Owning the tools and having the skills, two totally different things.
Absolutely. And this is where the study really gets to the heart of the issue.
Okay, so what's the missing ingredient then? What's the secret sauce?
It's pretty straightforward, actually, teaching. We need to be directly teaching these digital literacy skills. And just as important, we need teachers who are confident and ready to teach them.
Makes sense, right? If teachers aren't comfortable using this stuff themselves, if they don't feel prepared, then how can we expect the students to get it? And that brings us to another thing that really jumped out from this study, the socio-economic divide.
Yes, that's a big one. Always complicated.
The study found a 31-point difference in scores between students whose parents had a bachelor's degree or higher and those who didn't.
Wow. 31 points, it's a huge gap.
It is. It makes you think about all the advantages or disadvantages that kids might be starting with and how that plays out in their digital lives.
Right, like families with more resources probably have more access to technology at home, right? Maybe more chances to do things outside of school that involve tech, museums and stuff.
And don't forget about the parents. Parents with higher education levels are probably more comfortable with technology themselves, which means they can help their kids more. It's not just a local thing. Remember, this study looked at 14 different countries and regions across the globe. And get this, the differences in scores were actually bigger within countries than between them.
Really? That's so interesting.
Right. It shows you how important it is to look at the whole picture. Every education system is different. Resources are spread out differently. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Okay, so we've busted the digital native myth. We've talked about how crucial teachers are, and we've touched on this whole socioeconomic divide. But this next finding, this one really surprised me.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it turns out that girls, on average, did better than boys in digital literacy.
No way. Really? I would have thought it would be the other way around.
Right. But here's the twist.
Uh-oh. There's a twist. I should have known.
They didn't just look at digital literacy as one thing. They split it into two categories. Computer and information literacy.
Okay, so that's like...
CIL, yeah. And then computational thinking, CT.
Got it. Two different things. One's about using information. The other's about problem solving with computers, right?
Exactly. And here's the thing. In CIL, the information part, girls were consistently ahead. But when it came to that computational thinking, breaking down problems and finding solutions, boys were in the lead.
Now that is interesting. It really makes you think, are there different ways boys and girls learn? Maybe different approaches to problems?
Right. I don't think it's about finding easy answers, but it definitely gives us a lot to think about,
Absolutely. And it's something we should be talking about more.
It really makes you realize that digital literacy is more complex than we often think, isn't it? It's not just one thing. It's a whole bunch of skills and what opportunities kids have and how they think about all of it. And that brings us to teachers. What about them?
Oh, absolutely. Teachers are so important in all this. I mean, they're the ones in the classroom every day, right? Trying to help kids make sense of this whole digital world that seems to be changing every minute.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like they have to teach the actual technical skills, but then they also have to teach kids how to think critically about all the information out there.
Totally. And it's not easy. Think about it. It's like being a tour guide in a museum that's always expanding. And they have to know the existing stuff and all the new stuff too, you know?
And the ICL study found that teachers are much better at their jobs when they feel supported, right?
Exactly. It found this connection between how comfortable a teacher is with technology, like their own comfort level, and then what they believe about technology in the classroom. If they're into it, the kids are more likely to learn.
That's so interesting. So it's not just about giving every teacher a classroom full of laptops and saying, good luck.
Right. It's much bigger than that. It's about giving teachers the training they need to keep learning.
Yeah.
And making sure they have good resources to use and that the whole school is on board with technology.
And maybe we need to thank teachers more often too, huh? They're the ones who have to deal with all of this every single day.
That's for sure. They're the ones shaping the next generation, and that's a big deal.
Totally. So we've talked about the students and the teachers, but now let's zoom out a bit. Why does all this digital literacy stuff even matter? Like, what's at stake here?
It's a good question, and honestly, it's something I think about a lot. I mean, think about it. Technology is everywhere now, in every single part of our lives, right? It affects how we talk to each other, how we work, how we get information about, well, everything. Being good with technology isn't really optional anymore.
Right. It's like knowing how to read in a world full of books.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, just like with reading, you can be good at it on different levels. It's not enough to just read the words on the screen. You have to be able to understand them, analyze them even. You have to know how to use that information in your life.
And maybe even more importantly these days, you have to be able to tell if someone is trying to trick you with that information.
Yes, 100%. You have to be a smart consumer of information. Can you tell what's true and what's not? Can you spot fake news when you see it? That kind of thing. And with all the misinformation out there these days, that's really important.
It's not just about protecting ourselves either, is it? It's about being good digital citizens too. Like, can we be respectful online? Can we have real, smart conversations online?
I totally agree. Digital literacy isn't just about knowing how to use the technology. It's about giving people the power to be part of the digital world in a good way.
It's like we've been saying, it's not enough to just give kids technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to actually teach them how to use it all in a good way and how to really think about it.
You said it. And the exciting part is we can always be doing better, right? We can always find new ways to do this.
For sure. So as we wrap up here, this is something I've been thinking about. If we shouldn't just hand kids a tablet and call it a day, then what should we be doing? How can we help them learn these digital skills in a way that really works? What makes you hopeful?
Oh, man, that's the question that keeps me up at night. But honestly, one thing that gives me a lot of hope is this idea of making it fun, you know? Like, what if we could make learning about tech more playful, more about asking questions?
Totally. Like less about just taking in information and more about making stuff, creating things.
Exactly. We got to spark that curiosity, right? And not just for students. Teachers need that too. We need to give teachers the freedom and the help they need to try out new tech in the classroom, to share what's working for them, to really make it all feel like, you know, worthwhile, like it's actually connected to what they're teaching.
Right. It goes back to that whole support system we were talking about earlier. Students, teachers, families, all of us, really, we're all in this together.
100%. And I really think if we can change how we talk about technology, you know, if we can stop being scared of it and instead think about all the good that it can do, all the possibilities.
I like how that sounds. Much more hopeful, right?
Definitely.
Well, it looks like that's about all the time we have for this deep dive. But this is something we can all keep thinking about, right? It's not like the conversation stops here.
Absolutely not. This is just the beginning. And who knows, maybe someone listening right now will be the one to discover a whole new way to use technology to make the world a better place. That's what I'm hoping for.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us, and keep those great ideas coming.